This legislation will increase accountability for wartime contracting and transform the way the federal government awards, manages, and oversees wartime contracts. It will help ensure that the waste, fraud, abuse, and mismanagement that we saw in Iraq and Afghanistan will never happen again. I want to make a few points about today's hearing. First, we are here today to seek input from the executive branch, agencies, and inspectors general because we want to get this right. The subcommittee has previously met with contractors and other stakeholders regarding this legislation. However, major portions of this bill deal with accountability and responsibility for the government, and that is by design. Therefore, I encourage you to share any suggestions you have to improve this legislation. Second, this legislation builds on existing structures and rules to solve the problems identified by the Commission. Senate Bill 2139 requires each agency responsible for wartime contracting to establish clear lines of authority and responsibility for all aspects of contingency contracting. It requires the Department of Defense, the State Department, and USAID to improve their training and planning for contract support in contingencies. The legislation reduces reliance on non-competitive contracting practices and restricts subcontracting practices that have resulted in a lack of transparency and visibility. The legislation requires agencies to conduct risk analyses before relying on private security contractors and to terminate unsustainable reconstruction and development projects. It also strengthens tools to combat human trafficking. This approach is pragmatic and will reduce the potential for waste, fraud, and abuse in future wars. Today and in the weeks and months to come, we have an opportunity to make a real change in the way government spends money during wartime. It is not too late to prevent further waste in Afghanistan. And it's not too late to prevent the problems in Iraq and Afghanistan from occurring in the next war, whenever and wherever that may be. Everyone knows that contracting in a wartime environment is not going to go away. It will be here with our nation in the future. It is imperative that we no longer make excuses, rationalizations, or hide behind existing structures to defend the gross inadequacies that our government has displayed during contracting processes in Iraq and Afghanistan. We must fix these problems now while the memory is fresh, while the memory of these failures are fresh, and before the harsh lessons of Iraq and Afghanistan are forgotten. I remember on my first trip to Iraq on contracting oversight, I remember being accompanied by a general, a high-ranking general in the Army. And I remember the conversation where it was said, you know, we did a lessons learned after Bosnia. I just don't know what happened to it. I want to make sure that those same sentences are not uttered during the next contingency as we face contracting in the most difficult environment that contracting occurs, and that is when our men and women are putting their lives on the line for our security and our freedom. It seems to me that a criminal indictment of a contractor should be an event that requires some folks in that agency to take a hard look, do some scrubbing, and figure out what the problem is, and if the problem is an isolated bad employee, that be documented thoroughly with some kind of formalized process. We all know that for every dime we spend on auditors, we get back $1 or more. I just use dime dollar because it's safe and I'm conservative, you know, because you got to be able to back it up, right? I think I should point out for the record that none of you are the official, full-time, appointed and confirmed IGs. I guess you are, Mr. Carroll.
No, I'm not.
No, you're not either.
Right now, and my authority is run out.
Yeah, that's right. So we do not have SIGAR, we do not have DOD, we do not have state, and we do not have AID in terms of an appointed and confirmed Inspector General. And let me say, in case anyone is, let me disabuse anyone of the notion that I'm not willing to criticize the White House, I find it appalling that these people have not been appointed. And there is a long list of qualified people to hold these jobs. And I'm sure that some of you are on those lists. if not all three of you. And I do not understand why this is taking so long. I mean, if you look at the world of inspector generals and the money that's being spent, how these positions can go vacant for this period of time is beyond me. And I'm hoping that the White House gets busy and starts announcing the appointment of some inspectors general.